Welcome back. We're just going to go through this one pretty quick. What we did is we added some LED lights to our 856. It is an 856 custom, so from factory it only came with one light housing on each fender, which made it pretty dark at night. It give you a whole lot of flexibility, and working day shift there may be quite the possibility of working at night, doing some field work, things of that nature. Also, we use it to push snow, and that sometimes at night, and it's just didn't have the best visibility. It also didn't have any sort of like flasher on the rear, like a red flashing light or anything like that. So we went ahead and got some of those added. So we'll just show you kind of briefly what we went ahead and did. To start with, we got this LED light bar up front. We just took a piece of like 2-inch steel, and it was 3 foot long, cut in half, drilled out bolts where our holes are for our brackets. I'm hoping this is tall enough that when we put our weight bracket, we still can put the weights. We might have to kind of redesign this later, if we have to make it taller or something of that nature. We'll go over some pros and cons of some of the lights that I found. All of these lights I really just found on Amazon and went ahead and put them on. They're not case lights, they're not anything special. I got 2 different styles. For the fenders, we left the original light housing just because we had it. It was there. It's not going to blind anybody if you're going down the road. We added an LED light pod to each fender. And then also on the back, we added a light pod on each fender. And in the middle, it is a white light. And on the edge, it is either a solid red light or it flashes. So we wanted to do this project for a couple of reasons. Number one, we needed more light. And number two, our light switch wasn't actually working all that well. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. And it kind of got to the point where it stopped working altogether and we had no lights to begin with. So we replaced the light switch. We replaced some wiring and things of that nature. We cleaned up all of our grounds and got our lights working. Essentially, to get your light switch off, it looks like this. And I'll show you where it's located. This is behind your panel. This sticks through it. You have a bolt that goes on there, and then you have your knob, which is held on, in this case, by a flathead screw. And you would rotate it, it would turn this, and you would be able to control which lights you have. On a normal 856, you would have your low beams, your high beams, and maybe your work light in the back, something like that. So if you look here on the prongs, you'd have your battery prong, and then you'd have your series of other prongs that would be controlled by your switch. Because we only had the fender lights, we only had one cord coming off of that, and then we had one cord going to our dash lights, which I didn't realize that we had, nor did they work. But after kind of fooling around with a little bit, I found the connections, and we got those working as well. So on our 856, our switch is located right down here. This is the factory one that came off of it. I figured it looked a little bit better than the silver one, so we threw the factory one right back on it. In order to get to the back side, you have to take this first panel off, which is held on by half a dozen bolts. You also have to pull your lever for your TA, which then you also have to take your handle off. Now, this is a little bit of a rat's nest, and I don't know how well my lighting is. See if we can get some more light. So right down there is our new switch. It's very similar to design, however a little bit different. I would have liked more of a factory one for a couple of reasons. So your battery connection is down there. Then you have all the prongs on the side that go for your position switch. I found the dash lights just kind of dangling in there, so I got those plugged in. and they worked. We got a couple issues that we need to figure out too. I mean, my rat's nest of wires. That's probably why I don't have a fuel gauge or a thermometer gauge. So we want to get that figured out too. It'll just be some more time. Hopefully we'll have more time after planting, but that's to come. So this switch doesn't work quite as factory, but it'll work well enough for me. So you have your first switch. It turns on your dash lights, which we got one at the bottom of there. We got one for the fuel and for our temp, which again, this gauge doesn't work. But the first switch turns on those and also turns on your outside fender light. Now what I think is supposed to happen is, so your first switch turns on your outside fender light, so our factory one. It also turns on our gauge lights. And how it kind of works is the top prong is electrified and also your side prong is electrified. If you turn your switch again, you still have your marker lights or your outside fender lights on, that's it. But then it would also power the upper prong, but not the lower prong. I have a feeling that was for if you have different marker lights or a turn light or something like that, or a strobe function or something of that nature, that's what that would do. Again, it's not quite factory, and so I would have, you'll see here in just a second. But when you turn that on, it then turns off my dash lights because it's not sending power to there. But I have it sent, so I get power to, now I have my LED lights, pod lights. I have the rear lights on as well, and then it powers the light bar. So as you can tell, there's a whole lot more light now than just that. The other thing I have it wired up to is those pods have the red lights built into them, wired a little bit differently, and I have those wired to the same circuit that my original fender lights are on. So whenever I have my fender lights on, I will always have my red lights on. Like I said, those rear are solid, and then if you turn them off and turn them right back on, they go to a strobe function, which will give me a little bit more visibility driving down the road. People are going to see a red light, but they're really going to see a flashing red light. So if I turn that off and right back on, now they're solid again, and they'll stay solid if I turn on or off those. It's only when I fully turn off the light and turn them back on do they flash. So as you can tell, it's just a ton of light that's coming off of that tractor now, a whole lot more compared to the old one. We will put the cover back on and get it outside and make sure all of our adjustments are right. But I am very pleased with the amount of light that comes off of that. Just real quickly, if we turn off our garage light, I mean it's quite well illuminated in there, and so I'm pleased with the amount of light that comes off of these. We'll go ahead and go through what I would do if I had to buy it again. I would buy lights that all have this type of mount. With this type of mount, I can twist it left, right, you know, put it down in place. They have Allen wrench bolts that go in here, so I can tilt that up and down, so I can get it exactly pointed where I want to. These, however, have a completely different mounting system. I have a couple of spares that I can show you with. So these lights, I ended up getting a 4-pack of these with the light bar, and then those were separate. And like I said, they're just Amazon lights. How these mount on is they have little bolts in there, and then you have this guy that will line up right there. You'll bolt it in place, and you will have a bolt that sits right there. So this advantage is you can move it left to right. Your hole doesn't have to be perfect. However, you can either have these lights pointed way up or way down unless your mount is perfectly right. So with these, your only adjustment, you could adjust to there or you could adjust back there. If you flip them the opposite direction, you have it sitting like that or you have it sitting way down. So these were incredibly difficult, especially like this front. In order to get this to sit level, I had to bend this a lot more than 90 degrees. Or less than 90 degrees, I guess it would be. But I initially had it flat, thinking that would be good. And I had to continue to bend it down, or this was just going to shine right up in the air. And that wasn't going to do anything for me. So if I had to do it again, I would buy mounts that sit like this, where I can swivel left and right. I can go up and down. If I was ever going to replace those, I would definitely do something like that. I would even consider doing like an amber light on the edge if they sold something of that. Electrical actually wasn't too bad to run. We went from our switch for our hot kind of down underneath. We followed that. We split right there and we went to the front. That is a quick connect. So you would disconnect that and then you could take off the front and you would still have power to your other lights. And then kind of followed it down and around, kind of zip tied it to some hard points. And right there is where we split. I went to the other side of the tractor, then it went up. So the black is for our LEDs, the red is for our original fender lights. We then came up, and on this side it's pretty nice. It's got this tube that it runs through, and it kind of goes right there. And we went up to the front. It does ground out to the fender on both sides, so that was relatively easy. Up here on the front of the tractor, we used the same ground that our ether assist does. So we grounded right there, and it goes all the way, grounds off on the frame up there. And then kind of the same deal down here. We have our quick connects, so we can disconnect our front light bar off at both places, the front and the back. So we have the original manufactured cable disconnected, or we have the whole thing if for whatever reason. Because we do have the front end loader, I didn't want to run my cables right here for fear that they might get pinched or cut. So I actually kind of just run down here and then loop through there, trying to stay out of the way of that steering knuckle, and then underneath right there. So electrical didn't run actually that bad, and we got us going that way. So this right here would have been our factory view. A little bit better in person, but you would have had little visibility with just getting our fender lights going. In the back you would have had nothing. So that's what it looks like with our LEDs. You can see down at the road now, you can see all around you. The back isn't as bright as I would want it. I need to adjust these a little bit, get those down. It'll do. I mean, you shouldn't really need a whole lot pointing in the back. Yeah, it'll do for now. But the front, really, I mean, it's a million times brighter. I might play with these side ones, see if I can't turn them out a little bit more, get a little more side visibility, especially with that front light bar. But yeah, that's just for reference. You know, boom, you know, you still have our lights on, but go ahead and turn those LEDs on, and wow, you know, it's a world of difference for sure.